Hello and welcome back everyone to PKIdeas for another tournament reflections video. This time around we are looking at the Australian National Championships round number 3. So where we are at right now in the tournament is that we've drawn our first game against Canfield Mike. In the second round we versed Elliot Renzies and got a win, and this time around we are versing Gordon Yang. Now this game is probably one of the more depressing games that I've ever played. I butchered the game completely, but one of the more beautiful things about this game, even though that I didn't win, is the way that my opponent used the 2 bishops. Really well done and really nice. And I think that this game is a good example of how to use the 2 bishops exactly as they should be. So let's get straight into the game. I was white against Yang Gordon, who is 1768. So this is how the game went. You have the first move, knight f3, followed by c5, c3, knight f6, d4, e6, e3. So this is the collar system. Inherently, the engine obviously gives a slightly advantages for black because the collar system is such a defensive system. But d5, bishop to d3, bishop to d6, knight b to d2, castles, knight b d7, rook e1, e5, and e4. The whole idea of the collar system is that the bishop on d3 pretty much attacks black's king side and keeps an eye out on that whole diagonal. What black's main aim should be is to try and open up the center and attack on the queen side. So he got the first idea, and he's also about to start the second idea by playing queen to c7. Now they say that this is a novelty, but it's still a good move. Here I played e takes d5, he played e takes d4, and I played c takes d4, c takes d4, knight to b3. And instead of knight to b3, knight to e4 can also be played, after which knight takes d5, bishop to d2, knight to c5, and rook to c1. Now, this is, as you can see down here, the engine is saying that this is a pretty much a clear advantage for white. Back to knight to b3, which is what I played. Then he played knight to e5, then I played knight takes e5, a bad move. Instead of knight takes e5, what I could have played was probably do knight b takes d4, after which bishop to g4 is a possibility, or knight takes f3 check is the main move, and then after knight takes f3 it's a slight advantage for white. Now if he does take here on d4, I obviously have bishop takes h7, and then queen takes knight. Instead, after knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, we now have a drawn game. h3, h6, queen f3, rook to d8, bishop to e4, queen to d6, and knight to d2. After which, knight takes e4, queen takes e4, bishop to f6, and knight to c4. So here he has got a extra pawn, because in the next move, queen takes d5, I have lost my pawn that was on d5, and this means that he has a centralized passed pawn and isolated passed pawn in the d file. So queen takes d5, rook takes d5, rook to e8, king h7, bishop to f4, after which b5, knight to d6, and then he played bishop to b7, which is an extremely good move. After which I opted to play rook takes a8. After bishop takes a8, I played knight to e8, bishop to e5, and here I played the blunder, knight to c7. Now, instead of knight to c7, what I could have played is probably play something like bishop takes e5, rook takes e5, and knight to d6. But the only thing is, notice here that my knight is pretty significantly trapped in this position. What he can play is probably play something like f6 and then play rook to d5, and then my knight is pretty much screwed and I'm down a whole piece. Instead I played knight to c7, after bishop takes f4, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. Okay, now this is the crucial position, especially when I have a rook against his 2 main bishops and an extra pawn. So just by counting the value of pawns in terms of the difference, counting the difference in terms of the value of the pawns, we can already see that he is up 2 pawns. So he's got 2 bishops and a pawn, which is 6 pawns plus an extra pawn, so 7 pawns, against just my rook, which is only going to be 5 pawns. Now, that being said, if I manage to win that d pawn, then his life is going to be a lot more harder for him. So I played rook to d1, he played bishop to e5, and I played b3. I have to defend my pawn on a2, so that's why I played b3. Bishop to e4 was played, rook to d2, and then d3. Now he's slowly starting to advance. At this moment, I realized that pretty much there's no way that I can stop the pawn, and I might as well give up the game right here, right now. But I played f3, he played bishop to c3. Now notice if I do take that bishop on e4, it means that he takes my rook. So I played rook to d1, bishop to g6 was played, king to f2, and then d2. The pawn is on the second rank, and now the dark squared bishop is guarding the pawn, and the light squared bishop's job is to push away the rook. So king to e2 and bishop to c2. In this position, I pretty much just resigned. Now if we just go back for a second, after bishop takes f4, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, we are going to look more deeply into how the bishops exactly help the pawn progress. So rook to d1, bishop to e5. In this position, the dark squared bishop is guarding the pawn, which is on a dark square, and it's the light squared bishop's job to vacate the square that is in front of the pawn. So after b3, bishop to e4 was played. Now notice after bishop to e4, this square is vacated and guarded by this bishop, which means that this pawn push is coming. So now rook to d2, he played d3. Now notice that the light squared bishop is guarding the pawn on d3. Now it is the dark squared bishop job to vacate this square. So he can go about it in two ways. He can go about it via bishop to f4, or he can go about it via bishop to c3. So after f3, he played bishop to c3, not really caring about the empty attack that I just gave him. So rook to d1, I moved away my rook, and he played bishop to g6. After which, king to f2. I'm moving my king closer and closer, but unfortunately that's not enough. d2 was played. Now, the dark squared bishop is defending the pawn on the dark square, and it's the light squared bishop's job to attack this rook. There's two ways to go about this. Once again, probably bishop to h5 or bishop to c2. More chances are that he goes to bishop to c2, because if bishop to h5, my pawn on f3 is already defending the rook. So king to e2, and now bishop to c2. At this moment, it's bishop takes, rook is coming, or the pawn queens, and ultimately he's going to be left with an extra piece to play out the game. So I'm pretty much lost in this position. Ultimately, it's a really good game to learn from, simply because you understand how the two bishops work in the ending, especially when you got a passed pawn. So I think that's the major thing to take away from this game, that no matter if your opponent has a rook or even a queen or even any of the major pieces, as well as some extra material, if you got the two bishops, that is a significant advantage over your opponent. So that's why in the opening especially, people say that, okay, so what you want to do is preserve the two bishops so that when you get an open game, it means that you can use the bishops to their optimum advantage and cover the whole board. In the ending, when there are no pieces on the board, the bishops pretty much cover the whole board anyways. So they have a wider attack range, a wider dynamic sense of play. So it means that they'll pretty much ruin you if you just have a rook. If you had two rooks, they'll still ruin you, but you can afford to lose a rook for a bishop and try and dumb down the threat. So that's why in this position I couldn't necessarily do anything about it, because I didn't have an extra rook. So I think that concludes today's analysis of the Australian National Chess Championships, the reserves division, the one that I played in, and especially looking at my game against Gordon Yang. So really good congratulations to Gordon for winning this game, and pretty much, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the analysis. If you did, please go down below and hit that like button for me. If you didn't like it, please dislike it, because I want to know what you feel. I want to know what you think about all of these videos. So just go do that. And if you have any comments about the games at all, or any other analysis which I might have missed, please also go down into the comment section below and tell me about it. Tell me what I'd missed. Tell me anything to improve on, because, you know, I'm learning as well, and I would like to know what you think. And last but not least, please go down below and hit that subscribe button for me. If it is red, turn it into grey. If it's grey, don't turn it back into red. Just leave it grey. It helps me out as well as helping you out, because every time that I upload these videos, you get notifications on what the videos are and when exactly they've been uploaded. So that being said, all of my socials are also down below. Please go follow me on that. Just interesting things about my life, to be honest. This is what this channel is all about. So if you like to follow what I'm doing, just go into the socials and hit a follow or hit a like, so that you also can see what's going on in the rest of my life. And that being said, that concludes today's game. Thank you. And that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.